This meeting is now being recorded.
Well, we are very excited to have Dr. Larry Kennedy here. So Dr. Kennedy is the founder and CEO of the Quality Management Institute. He is also a co-founder of the Systems Engineering Quality Management SEQM working group in INCOSE, and an IBM partner providing educational service to systems engineering information technology professionals. He has provided consulting service to business and nonprofit organizations since 1985, the year that I'm born. His clients have included criminal justice, educational, healthcare, and government leaders. A more recent project was the ACRES Site Accreditation and Standards Institute, in which Dr. Kennedy and the Quality Management Institute trained and managed an interdisciplinary group of stakeholders that include British Standards Institution to write a global standard for the quality management of clinical research sites and deploy its accreditation program. And Larry also have his story to tell you about Apollo spacecraft operations later on. And without further ado, here's Larry. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Yes, the topic here today is leveraging human intelligence to increase the reliability of super systems. And I thought we would start by reviewing an experience I had and that was just referenced during the Apollo 11 launch. I call it Apollo 11 Game Day. So if you play the video for me, I'd appreciate it, and we'll pick up immediately after the video. It's 4 minutes long.
Sounds good. So right there, I will switch presentation. See, I'll bring up the video right now. All right, I hope everyone sees the video, and there is audio as well. Maybe you can adjust the volume a little bit whenever you like.
July 16th, 1969 is a day that I will always remember. As a young associate engineer on the Apollo spacecraft launch team, I had watched with envy as previous flight crews walked out that familiar doorway just below my office window and into their waiting motorhome for the ride to the launch pad several miles away. The excitement and anxiety that pulsed through the members of the launch team can only be described as game day. As I walked excitedly down the hallway toward the engineering office, I met my boss coming the other way. When he saw me, a big smile broadened his face, and he said, "You're just the person I wanted to see." Those words usually meant that he wanted something expedited, and I was always eager to serve the super specialists. They were a team of 12 state-of-the-art engineers who were the best in their fields. They really knew how to do things right, and I had been assigned to them as a data analyst and general all-round gopher. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a white plastic-coated card imprinted with the words, Apollo 11 Launch Crew VIP. And he said, "If I give this to you for a few hours, what would you do with it?" With that card and the color code on my security badge, I could, subject to the need to be there, go absolutely anywhere there were flight operations. My heart leaped. As I reached for the card, I said, "I know exactly what to do with this card. See you later." I wanted to get as close to the launch as possible, so I headed for the VAB in the special VIP viewing area with the hope of getting the view of a lifetime. I walked on past the stands, trying to remain calm and nonchalant as various security guards glanced at the security badge and VIP card, now hanging from my shirt pocket. I kept thinking, absolutely anywhere, as I continued walking down the dusty road leading to the launch pad, and right up to the fire trucks, the closest anyone could be to the launch. I got a lot of funny looks from the firemen, but I said nothing and stopped short of getting close enough to talk. Being there was surreal, and just moments after I arrived at the fire trucks, the bright flash of the rocket engines ignited with an indescribable fury that shook the ground like an earthquake. The deep power of the vibration caused my clothes to flap and wave on my body in a windless, rhythmic dance. My legs felt weakened and immobile as they wobbled in sync with the ground. It was an astonishing moment, both exhilarating and terrifying. Just as the Saturn V rocket cleared the launch tower, I had this amazing revelation. That fiery projectile and its precious cargo was the result of millions upon millions of individual actions and tasks that were done right. As the spacecraft hurtled into space, there were millions more electrical pulses and other events happening at billionth of a second speed that all had to work in near-perfect sequence for several days in succession for the Apollo 11 crew to safely reach the moon and then return. And it had been done by people like me, average people, who were willing to submit themselves to the discipline and accountability of simple process management concepts. There were only a handful of scientists and engineers who could be categorized as super specialists. The rest of us were average people working with a zero defects hard attitude and the ethical restraint common to our generation. Really, all things were possible.
I'm waiting for you to confirm that we switch back to my screen.
I see the slides now.
Good, thanks. Well, that was a very exciting day for me. It was a life-changing day, as a matter of fact. And I had two great revelations that day. One you just heard. The other was I thought if that son of a gun blows up, I'm a dead man. I was standing out there, and I remember the looks of the firemen. They turned around, and they had their suits on with their glass windows and all. I was like, what are you doing down here, you crazy kid? But it was one of those wonderful things because I began to realize from that day forward that average people could perform at very high levels and work in a complex super system like that was and produce amazing positive outcomes. So one of the things that we had to realize back then that was we were doing things that hadn't been done before. There wasn't any program, there wasn't any much of a diagram really. When the president got up and said, let's go to the moon and come back safely. And so everything had been done very systematically, but on the fly, really ad hoc. As it got organized, then we started to apply systems thinking to it. But everything we did to perform at a high level was done systematically. My very first assignment was for the super specialists and was to create a systems requirements document for all the tests and pre-test launching of the pre-testing for launch of the Apollo spacecraft subsystems. That was a very interesting thing because I got to interact with each one of the lead systems engineers. And I got to see the importance of detail and sequencing and how systematically they had laid out how they were going to do these tests and how each test was very carefully configured. So it was very easy then for me to say, well, all I have to do is submit to this systematic way of validating the inputs and outputs. And I had to adjust some to the rigor and the due diligence. Being a young man and working for those kinds of people who had really advanced degrees and experience, most of them were 20, 30 years in various aerospace capacities. It was a challenge to me to keep up, to even at that time understand the language at times. And the rigor and due diligence that they brought to the table, often people refer to von Braun and others who basically established our system for aerospace, for space systems and aerospace development. But really, it was more of the nature of the culture. The people that were drawn to that kind of work, the systems engineers and all the other specialty engineers, everything from mechanical to civil and so on and so forth, it was part of their routine to submit themselves to rigor and due diligence. And then we went from systematic to systemic collaboration, where we knew if we tested our module or our process or our task in and of itself and by itself, we could know pretty well it was working as proper. I was just reading yesterday again about Apollo 13 and how the cryogenic tank, the oxygen tank, was dropped off of a shelf some good length of time before it actually exploded. It was dropped. It was supposed to be on Apollo 10, and they didn't thoroughly test it, because it's one thing to run a leak test or to run an electrical test to see if the power flows through it or not. It's quite a different thing to connect it to all the other systems. And so we always did systemic collaboration. And there were about 12 of these senior systems engineers. They call them the super specialists back then. And we sat in an open room, little green metal desk way back then, and I was right in the middle of it. I was about 10 feet away from Bob Miner's office, who later became head of the shuttle system as well. And I got to hear them interact as you would around a kitchen table almost. Hey Joe, I've got this thing going up. Anybody want to jump in on this? And they would discuss from a systemic point of view how what they were considering might affect, with unintended consequences, someone else's subsystem, and how they might devise a test to make certain that they didn't make any mistakes. So that was my first experience in a super system, and it was one of the first super systems that was publicly known. And that those of you that know the history of aerospace know that there were a number of very incredible super systems coming out of the Department of Defense that were already operating, satellite systems and so on. But we've moved on. We have the shuttle. We're now into incredible systems for healthcare and support, and the kinds of surgeries that can be done, these microsurgeries and what have you. We've gone into quantum computing and high-speed rail. Of course, we've got good and bad stories about that, don't we? But there are all kinds of super systems that have emerged, and some of them are basically commercial and the kinds of things you interact with every day. Here's a few examples. The complexity of these systems, their vertical integration or not, and their supply chains, and the complexities of all of the different parts and pieces, everything from manufacturing to delivery to the end user, are very, very complicated. And we've developed software systems to help manage those things. And without those software systems, it gets very complicated. We had 3-ring binders, and I would take these requirements on handwritten pages, just like you would ruled paper when you were in elementary school. They would write them out on those handwritten pages. And then I would make a list from that, and I'd go down and get on an IBM key punch machine and punch out a punch card, and then I would run a list. Then I would go back and take that list and sit down and compare and say, is this what you wanted? Is this spelled right? Is it in the right sequence? And so on and so forth. Verifying very much like some of the software we have today to eliminate any kinds of errors in syntax or whatever. And so these software systems weren't available to us, but because it took us a long time to do what now you could do rapidly. But with the right due diligence and rigor, you can pretty much do the same thing. It takes a lot more resources. It takes a lot more time and effort, but it's doable. So one of the
Larry, sorry to disrupt. What page are you on?
I thought you were seeing my screen.
Well, it seems like it's not progressing until I move my
The slides
arrow.
were kind of flipping around through different ones. And also, if everybody could mute who's not speaking, we're getting a lot of keyboard noise coming through.
Yeah. Are you sure you've switched it back to me?
Yeah, so it's I'm seeing page 11 on mine.
I see the Super System Vision IBM Super System Resources Red Hat logo. That's
where I am. That's where I am.
Oh, all right.
Okay,
That's good.
sounds good. Okay. All right. Yeah, you can continue. Yep.
Okay, that's all right. Now, this is not a commercial for IBM. We've just recently matured into a good partner relationship. But I've been working with people like Barclay, who was a former IBMer and is now Raytheon fellow, and others over the last 2 or 3 years to develop an understanding of how a super system can benefit from leveraging the intelligence of humans, and that we need to understand we can't depend upon the software to replace that kind of an attitude of rigor and due diligence. You can't depend on the software to do things that only a human can do. And I'll get into that as we move along. over the years, we've developed all kinds of interesting methods and technologies with promise, and that we've made promises about. We want to perform at high levels in a complex super system, but often we find that there's a lot of underperformance. And it's caused often by collecting metrics that aren't relevant or rushing to the market. And I call it racing past the facts to get to an outcome. Sometimes we like to say we've developed a system of metrics that are important and that we're depending on them to make good decisions about our process. But often those metrics get shelved, or they're not correlated in such a way that we make good decisions. And often we're being driven to the marketplace by other issues, even marketing. There's a lot of discussion now about the Boeing 737 MAX and how a marketing decision had to put a lot of pressure on that to move forward. I'll go back further to the space shuttle. There was a marketing decision that we were going to publicize a young woman who was a teacher on that flight, and there was a lot of positive pressure to stay on schedule because of television coverage and things that had been arranged. Whatever the final decision is, if that wasn't a rush to market, if that wasn't racing past the facts to get to an outcome, I'm not sure what I would call it, but it was a failure of ethics. So one of the things that we have to do in the current world that we live in, and the COVID-19 thing has really, this whole pandemic has brought to the front how frail our communication systems are. And that we need to make promises to our customers that are reasonable so that their expectations of what we're going to do for them is relevant to what we're able to accomplish. You can see here a radio tower versus the Eiffel Tower, which is, of course, a radio tower. It depends upon how you want to describe it, because the promise and the dream and the challenge of reality should be the same. And it's very clear. The world's best hamburger is not a filet. If you describe the hamburger so much that the person thinks they're getting a filet, you're raising the expectation to a level that is bound to fail. It's predestined to fail. So there are a lot of different super system methodologies, and I just like to describe some of them and give you my viewpoint on their practicality. Scaled Agile is an interesting one. The Scaled Agile framework takes the Agile methodologies and the doctrines, the principles, and allows you to implement from either a project level right up to an enterprise level with many, many projects and many, many tasks and hundreds and even thousands of trackables in it. And theoretically, it's a tremendous piece of software. In practice, it's a tremendous piece of software. But the problem is, it's extremely gameable with all kinds of false positives that can be reported. And it provides cover for the disengaged, for people that really aren't working with an attitude of the zero defects attitude, as we say, or that have the right rigor and due diligence, or who even really care. And so when you get people like that working in a system that is supposed to be controlled by something called Scaled Agile, it doesn't work except for the people who are engaged, who do have the right attitudes. So another thing that we've evaluated over the years is the effectiveness of Agile development methods. The promise is pretty clear that it's more, provides an accelerated output, has a kind of a reliable development process. I remember when I first studied it, and I said, well, I was listening to people, and they're talking about how much more effective it was than waterfall. And I said, well, you do realize that the Agile development process is only many iterations of waterfall. It gives you the opportunity to mature your requirements, to break down your tasks so that they're closer together. You have the extra iterations to make adjustments and corrections and so on and so forth. Yeah, we just think it's fantastic. And I said, well, why do you think what's so great about it? And they said, oh, it's 3.5 times. They have statistics. They said it's 3.5 times more effective than waterfall. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good, because I'm thinking when we were implementing a waterfall methodology, it was like 70-80% effective. I'm thinking 3 times 70 or 80, that's pretty good. That's 200. I mean, that's bigger than 100% to me. And I thought there's something wrong with this. So I got to digging around. What I found out is that Agile is successful on an average of 39%, which is 3.5 times waterfall, which is 11%. Now, those were statistics of 4 years ago. If you read the Standish report, you can see the latest one's 2019. It's like 42% now instead of 39. That could be just variables in the analysis. But what really stunned me was how excited people were that they could get a 39% output reliability and be happy about it. If I'd walked into the systems engineering office and said, hey, I've got a really neat adjustment I want to make to your process, and I've tested it, and we're really excited it works properly 39% of the time, I'd have been blackballed from the industry. They wouldn't have let me back in the office again. So the promise and what the delivery promise was is way, way below what it should be. This is a CFO's nightmare, because what this proves is it's not the methodology, because Agile methodology is like 100% in terms of the doctrines and the guiding principles, and the guiding principles of Agile are almost exactly the same as orthodox quality management. So really this points to a culture and process problem. And I'll give you some more statistics on it. So here's another good one, DevOps. You know, we couldn't quite possibly get it all together by putting a layer of legalism and rules called Agile and Scaled Agile. So we came along with DevOps because there's still these horrendous gaps between the software developer and IT operations. We're going to solve it. So we come up with a whole new set of language, a whole new set of initiatives, a way to get people to communicate with one another. So when you come back from the DevOps seminar, man, you're singing Kumbaya. You're feeling so good. We talked to some of those nasty IT jerks down the hall, and the IT people are saying we talked to some of those nasty software developers, and they're both getting around coffee and drinks, and it's in those idiots over there in operations, and then all the three of you say, well, what about the C-suite? They don't know what in the world they're doing. The problem is, unless you get that culture beyond digital to business, all you're doing is throwing accusations back and forth across the wall. And all you're going to get is a little Hawthorne effect after you come back from the seminar. You'll feel good for a few weeks or months. There'll be some communications for a few weeks or months, but it's not principled enough that it goes beyond reveling in your digital culture and not understanding the importance of the business culture that supports it. You have the same thing with very well-known software that's available, and I'm using Doors and Doors Next Generation. When I first saw the capability of these software products, I said, oh man, if we'd had something like this back then, holy cow, really fantastic. And so this is a computing and management resource. It helps us manage very much like some of the other things that I've talked about. It manages the interaction and the flow of work. It helps us to hold some controls over it. And when properly applied, it provides really good, reliable lifecycle management. The problem is, in most cases, it's dramatically underutilized because of the lack of QM fundamentals. If I don't understand the fundamentals of quality management, I don't understand how to apply the data it's giving me. I don't even know how to query it properly. I'm just filling in the blanks, and I'm doing it in a rote fashion instead of using the tool to support the human intelligence and the reliable process. Another discussion that's taking place more and more today is AI, artificial intelligence. And Barclay was in a meeting one day. I think you may recall this, Barclay, and a friend of ours from England said, who has a PhD in AI, said, Larry, one of the principles of the Quality Management Institute training, which we felt, said is about a zero defects attitude. And he says, how would you relate attitude, the zero defects attitude, to artificial intelligence? He said, this is a difficult problem to solve. And I said, not really. Because machines don't have attitude, and they don't have feelings. And guess what? They don't think, and they don't learn. They aggregate. They aggregate very rapidly, and based on the aggregation and whatever algorithm that you've placed over the aggregation of the data, it can narrow down data points and give you a really rapid calculation that you could have probably done yourself. But the limitation is who writes the algorithm and who interprets the data and applies it once it's output. There's the limitation. I'm not so sure that some people that write the algorithms have enough experience or have enough knowledge or get this, or even engage. They think maybe it's just something they're having fun with, like it's a board game or something. So these things are limited, again, by the people who write the algorithms, the ones that interpret the data, and anyone at the senior levels who, and this happens a lot, bankers do this a lot, engineering organizations do this a lot, they buy the technology so they don't have to think anymore. They buy the technology so they don't have to endure the rigor and the due diligence. But actually all the technology is supposed to do is assist those things, to augment the human intelligence. Super system vulnerabilities that I want to bring attention to are competency, ethics, and accountability. These are some interesting statistics that I often quote. The first is from the Gallup poll, the State of the American Workplace. In that poll, it says 70% of people that they polled, and we're talking tens of thousands. It's not a small poll. It's a rolling poll that goes on continuously every year. Last year, it was 67%. You see these plus or minus 2 or 3% variables, which could just be polling error, but it stays pretty steady around 70%. And the polls show that this disengagement is built sort of this way. About 33% of the people are engaged and love their jobs and they're working hard at it. Somewhere around 51% are moving from disengagement, from disillusionment to disengagement. They're kind of frustrated. And around 16% are so actively disengaged, they're actually deliberately undermining the process as a game or fun or for vengeance. Those are large numbers because when you only have 33, 34% of your payroll fully engaged, it's not an effective human resource application. The American Institutes for Research also said that a 4-year college graduate, now this is 4 or 5 years old, of 4-year college graduates, 50% of the people with a 4-year college degree across all disciplines, same as the disengagement across all disciplines, lawyers, engineers, doctors, teachers, plumbers, all levels, all kinds of professional credentials or not, workmanship, however, same thing in the college degrees, 50% had so low of math skills or English proficiency that they couldn't pass a basic literacy exam. For 2-year degrees, which is where a lot of our texts come from, it's 75%. Here's the statistics, and I've given Hoki the slides so you can find this for yourself, but you can see on the top corner here, 33% of the workforce payroll, 51% disengaged. So you want to reach in here and try to re-engage some of these 51%, and these 16%, psychologists have said, and we have all the studies to support this, they're done. There's almost nothing you can do to turn them around. But if you don't do something to eliminate their effect, you start to lose more and more of these 51% through migration to other jobs, other places, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of turnover expense, and they do a lot of damage to people that are trying to do good, because the Gallup poll in Purdue University said the disengaged employees shift the load to the engaged employees and frustrate the high performers. So there are all kinds of productivity and profitability gains that can come from just re-engaging your staff. So super systems have to be supported by intelligent systems where the people are the major asset. I'm quoting the Kasparov effect, which actually was coined by our friend Barclay Brown. And the better person paired with the right technologies usually wins. He said, an intelligent system is the reasonable pairing of competent, well-prepared humans and technologies to improve outcomes. And I say a hearty amen. And it really is important that we grasp the fact that the technologies without the properly engaged human being with the right vocational skills and attitudes really is problematic. So it's time for a journey, in my opinion, back to digital reality. We've expected much, much too more out of our software. And we need to realize that technologies and technologists need to be balanced in some sort of reliable reality. That includes the decision makers and the implementers, and that we have not just work knowledge, but work culture balance. The limitations of higher education and corporate training are one thing, but then there are legacy-bound work cultures where we've just always done it that way. And, there's constant workarounds. Kim Stansfield at Warwick University in England said, it's the people, it's the people. And the KISS formula, keep it simple, stupid. Well, he says, it's the people, stupid. And he says the right people using the right processes and technologies is what we're trying to achieve. So you need a work culture that's engaged and well-trained as high performers. You need the right policies and procedures and the basics of how you're going to go about things, and the right technologies. Here's the Quality Accelerator Program that was designed by the Quality Management Institute, and we're in partnership using this as the basis for a training program that IBM is going to be offering. And it's basically this. If you want a reliable culture, you have to have skills that are supported by values. You see at the top there. And if you want a competent culture, you want to have values that are expressed through skills. So you can have all this enthusiasm and zeal, but you don't get a competent culture unless you attach to that the kinds of administrative skills and project management skills and leadership skills and the QM fundamentals and scientific method and systems thinking and those kinds of things. But if you have people that have all those but are basically disengaged, and they're heads down engineers, but they never look up and engage the people, they never look beyond the immediate culture, even to the end customer and identify with them, then you don't have a reliable culture. So you have to have the organizational values and personal values on the left, and you have to have the skills on the right. You're going to have a creative, innovative culture that can increase time to market and not just get past the facts. You have to have this balance in your culture. Here's a graph that displays the project complexity and the challenge to effectiveness and efficiency that go along as you go more complex from low to medium to high. Your QM fundamentals begin to be tested, the scientific method, systems thinking, work process analysis, the basic rigor and due diligence attitudes, process documentation. We have one example where a documentation failure, if it had been caught at the earlier levels, would have cost $30 to replace and to resolve. When it was caught, it was so deep into the process, and without documentation, it was just over $1 million to fix it, because they basically had to reverse engineer everything to find the error because of a lack of ethic and integrity and process over documentation. Time and resource management, people and process management, you can see how all of these can complicate outcomes and drive you down to a 39% output of reliability, even though you got these great pieces of software and these great systems for scaled Agile and all these things, because they won't take the place of the fundamentals of knowledge, the fundamentals of ethics and reliability. So what we've been doing, and Barclay maybe want to elaborate on this a little bit, in the quality management, the Systems Engineering Quality Management Working Group, is we want to see engineers become leaders. Because who's better to walk into the CFO's office or the chief engineer's office and say, I found a problem, I've identified how to fix it, I can submit you a reasonable budget of how to do it, let's give her a run here, let's save some money, maybe even save some lives, but for sure obtain some efficiencies and raise our effectiveness. So we're offering these basic fundamental trainings along with systems thinking and tools workshops so that IBM customers, and some of you probably are IBM customers, can have a more effective utilization of software, the tools. And we offer this quality manager and IT quality manager certifications. Here's the thing. All things are possible. Average people, properly paired with the right tools and process, can do great things. But we cannot go on ignoring the failure of the educational system, the failure of our culture, the failure of our leadership and business management and their continued ignorance about the fundamentals that have been very clearly and very properly identified through dozens of research projects. It's there for the taking. And we invite you to take a look at our website, the IBM subpage on the Quality Management Institute. There's a really great white paper. Barclay is one of the authors of that white paper. And the different offerings that we have. Now, I'm not selling anything, but I want you to have access to all the documentation. You can also find a link there to all the other research. There's about 20 pieces of research that point to or substantiate the things that I've been saying to you. So, Hokie, I've got 20 seconds left. I think I'll give them back to you. Hello?
Might be still muted. I don't hear anything. Except somebody's alarm clock.
Hello? Did we lose the entire audience here?
And Larry,
There we go.
I hear you. Oh, okay.
Yep, yeah, that's me. And yeah, thank you, Larry. And yeah, well, I think you set your alarm clock, your stopwatch right at the time. And yeah, thank you very much. And if anyone have any question, you can just unmute yourself and ask Larry directly. Well, Barclay, you want to, tell us about the work that you have done with Larry?
Yeah, just very briefly, Larry and I founded this systems engineering quality management working group. It's kind of different than a lot of INCOSE working groups because we're bringing a base of knowledge that Larry is providing right through the training, and so we're trying to take the group and bring us all up to a certain level and even a certified level as a quality manager through the Quality Management Institute, and then use that as a base to sort of integrate with systems engineering thinking and methodology, and then the result of that will contribute to INCOSE, and it'll take the form of contributions to future versions of the handbook, to the CBOC, to articles and webinars, that you'll see coming out of the group. So that's the idea, is we're trying to bring this quality management approach to INCOSE.
Thank you, Barclay. And I see there are a lot of cross paths between INCOSE systems engineering, quality management, project management, so on and so forth. And I think each one relates to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, bring the questions on to Larry. Someone ask something. Yep.
Somebody ask him something hard. He needs a hard question.
Barclay calls it stump the professor or something like that.
That's right.
Well, thank you for your interest, and I appreciate the opportunity today.
I have one question. My name is Mike Marua. I live here in the UK, and I actually invited a lot of our Rail Interest Group RIG to see this webinar. But as what you rightly covered today in quality, it should be also, how would you say this? Because when we look at the INCOSE handbook, quality has a very, I'd say, limited part of it, but actually this should be part of everything. And how would you, therefore, with that in mind, suggest that we relook at our handbook in terms of quality?
I'll start the answer, but I'll let Barclay finish it. We've realized that we have a possibility to make a great contribution, so we're organizing to write a primer on quality management, and we've been invited by Dave Walden. I saw Dave's. Yeah, Dave, you might be live on here now to edit that portion of the handbook regarding quality management. And Barclay, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I mean, what and you see this in the training. Quality management is made up of two primary things: quality control and quality assurance, which are sort of two aspects to it. And historically, the quality management world has emphasized, quality control more than quality assurance. Preventing the bad things from getting out versus putting good things in, right? But then the training through the Quality Management Institute is actually almost a layer above that or around that, which is the human values part. So that's what fascinated me about so much about this is it's not the statistical part of quality management or the numbers or the inspections or all that. It's more the human values and skills that are the foundation for all of it. And it's kind of a different angle. And so if you read Bill Crosby and you read Deming, you don't see this as much. It's in there, but it's not as brought to the front like as with this training. And it's a fascinating angle because just like Larry quoted Kim, it's the people. You know, if you've got people that have the wrong kind of values and are disengaged, it doesn't matter what kind of processes you have. It doesn't matter what kind of methods you're following or what kind of tools you have. It's going to be undermined because of the people.
If I could, can I just add something to this, Dave Walden? So I think that right now the handbook as it stands right now in 15288, it has the quality management at the organizational level, quality assurance at the project level, but I would agree with what Barclay says. It's focused more on quality control, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're excited to have the quality group revise those. We didn't really have a quality focused team, so those were just filled in by volunteers last time. So we're excited for that, but I'd also say this goes beyond what I think we call our traditional quality, and it gets into the built-in quality, but it also has a lot of impact on what we'll call soft skills, I think, for system engineers as well too. So I think we'll see things reflected with that in the handbook as well.
Right.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity because, and especially to speak to this group, because you represent such a broad swath of relevant groups, and they all have cross-pollination. I mean, these discussions belong in all of our groups. You know, I remember I visited the requirements group some time ago, and Jeremy Dick, I think, was leading it at the time. And I thought, this is fantastic, but it's in isolation. It is a very important part of the process. And I thought they had sliced the hairs and divided things so beautifully that anyone could understand it, but almost no one could implement it because of this lack of a culture to be able to support the wisdom, the dramatic wisdom that they were expressing. There wasn't a culture that could support it. They didn't look at it properly. So I just think the opportunity to work with these other groups and especially to contribute to the document that will be used by many, many people, a really great opportunity, because we're calling it at the Institute the second quality revolution. There aren't any whistles and bells or cute little things that we're bringing to the forefront like, oh, we've got this special way of doing things. No, it's basically the application of orthodoxy with a new emphasis on, as you said, Dave, properly on the soft skills and the humanity that's being misapplied at this point. So that's a long answer.
I sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, so Larry, I'll ask you something. Well, since your Apollo days until now, so what have been the most difficult challenges that you have encountered?
People.
Meaning it's always people. Yeah,
It's always the people.
It's really funny because, you know, I came out of a very highly technical environment at the Cape and working for people that were facts driven, and went into the business world and found people that were making wild guesses every day. We've got an icon in our training called Mr. Guessing What. And Mr. Guessing What gets up every day guessing what to do next and trying to avoid accountability. He's not facts driven. He doesn't have systems thinking to support him. He doesn't understand work process analysis or the basics of quality. And what I found over and over with, and I've worked in various environments, some foreign in Russia, a lot of healthcare environments, secure type of things, all kinds of business environments and government, and almost invariably when I was doing consulting as my primary activity, the CEO or the chief this or that would say, you know, we've got some kind of a morale problem around here, Larry. I'm not sure what it is, but we've got a morale problem. You think maybe you could get to the bottom of it? And I would say, I have 100% assurance that I can get to the bottom of it. That's not the question. The question is, what will you do with what I tell you? And the second thing I would tell them, because I got paid very well for this, and I would say, now you're going to pay me a whole bunch of money. Come here and train your folks and work with them, and I'm going to do it. But I just need to tell you up front, that almost every single thing I'm going to discover are things they've already told you. I'm going to aggregate them, and I'm going to put them in a maybe a little bit nicer package, and I'm going to deliver them to you sweetly. And every once in a while, I'm going to grab you by the shirt collar and shake you and tell you, wake up, listen to me. But if you'd have been listening all along, and you had the right setup and organizationally, and you didn't have some tyrants and so many disengaged that you were protecting, you'd have known this before. And they look at me and say, "You're serious?" I said, "Absolutely serious. You want to break the engagement, or do you want to go forward? Let's go forward." And the other thing that always came up regularly was this, and I'll use an example of one CEO. I was there for the first day, and these were 6-hour live sessions on site, and with 7 of them, 1 a month for 7 months. And so halfway through the session at lunch, he said, "Man, Larry, this is good stuff. I'm really enjoying this." He says, "I think our people are really going to prosper from this." I said, "Yeah, depends on you." He said, "What?" I said, "It depends on you, whether you get it and whether you handle it right. Like I told you the very first time we met." He said, "Okay, I'm with you, though. I'm with you." He says, "But so," and he's paying a bundle of money. He says, "Just between the two of us now, I'm not going to say anything to anybody." He says, "How many of there's 25 executives in the session?" He said, "How many of these folks you think are going to get it? I mean, are we going to miss a few? You know, how's it going to go?" And I said, "I think if we're really successful, 4 or 5 will be able to get this and apply it." He said, "Out of 25? I said, "Yeah, that'd be good. I'd be really happy." He went nuts. He said, "What? You want me to pay this much money?" I said, whoa, calm down. I said, "Your problem is you're not seeing it as I'm seeing it. I consider that critical mass. If you properly empower them, they will change your organization. They will self-govern. They'll run off all the 16%ers, I would say today. They will cause all the semi-disillusion to be reignited, and you will find yourself more profitable, etc., with far less human resources." He said, "You're going to run off some people." I said, "I hope so. I hope that your team decides we're not working with certain people anymore, and we're going to tell them that." So what they have a tendency to do is they don't go threaten anybody. They just start quoting the basic quality management doctrines, and the other people realize, I'm not going to prosper here anymore. I can't hide. My own culture is going to turn me in. And so they disengage from that culture, they deselect from that culture, and they go peacefully. It's really a wonderful thing to see. But those generally are the same problems that I've repeated over and over in government, in high-level manufacturing, commercial enterprises of all kinds, healthcare, nonprofits. It's always almost exactly the same thing. Fast forward to now. Most people have difficulty believing the statistics that's in all the research because they are so clear and they are so damning of our work culture. They really are. But when you stop and think about it, think about the last time you went down to the mall or to, the shopping center or someplace, and there was a little kiosk there, and you walked up and said, "Can you tell me about that thing right there?" And they go, "Huh? What? Yeah, I don't know what that is." That disengaged, that sad look you get. Well, guess what? It's happening in management. So one guy was telling me the other day, Barkley, you may recall this, there was 52 people in a room trying to define the requirements for a project. But they were so bound by inclusiveness that they had to have everybody give their opinion, and a lot of them were just trying to sound relevant, not like fools, like they didn't prepare. So they were all over the place for 8 or 10 hours and got nothing resolved. But there's those kinds of realities we just have to face and give people the opportunity. Now, what we do with our training is allow the training to validate and verify an individual's values and skills and let them decide. We don't pick anybody off and say, "You failed this, you don't know that." We let the person validate. And so the person who's a low performer, who's disengaged, invariably will find their way out because there's plenty of opportunities for the disengaged and the low performers in businesses around the world who don't recognize these things. Barkley, you want to comment on what I've said?
No, that's just it. I'm just was thinking through some of these concepts, and the Mr. Guessing What, I thought that, frankly, when I first encountered that in the course, I thought, oh, this is kind of silly. I mean, what a silly idea, And I kept meeting him, and he doesn't quite look like the picture in your course, of the photo of the guy, but the person, they act just like it. And sometimes it's Ms. Guessing What, it's not just Mike, right? It's equal opportunity here, it's whatever it is. And you can just tell as you watch the person that they don't know what they're talking about. They, of course, don't want you to know that. And so they pretend and they guess. And then there's maybe some people around who do know what they're talking, but Mr. Guessing What has just as much organizational prestige or level or something like that. And so he or she tends to overrule even the people that know what they're talking about.
That's right. That's right.
And Mr. Guessing What doesn't know enough to just shut up and let the knowledgeable people speak. That's something we call vocational certainty, which is another piece of the course.
That's right. That's right.
All right, we got 2 minutes. Yeah, one last question for anyone else? This is your time, Marius.
You want to know why I haven't gone crazy by now?
Tell us more.
Actually, I get up every day looking forward to this, because my job at this point in my life is to find people that understand this and enable them. Because we can recover from a lot of this very rapidly. And we see in various sectors where this enablement is take place that it's very promising to me. So here's an old guy, an old dinosaur from the Apollo days that still has fire, because I have hope. And I see the evidence every day. So that, I'm loving what I'm doing. And I appreciate being with this group, particularly because of your span of influence. And by the way, Barclay might want to mention, I'm providing this training free to this INCOSE groups. I'm not selling anything to you guys because I'm willing to invest in this group, because I know you'll take it wherever it needs to go. Barclay, you want to?
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what we're doing in that SEQM working group, is getting people through the training. Although human beings being what they are, you'd think, well, we've got 100 people in that SEQM working group. That's a pretty good working group, right? And how many of them are making it through the training? Well, it's not as many as you might think, right? But there are some. And just like, Larry wanted his 4 out of 25, well, that's probably about the proportion that are moving ahead in the group. So.
A little lower than that, actually.
Yeah, we thank you, Larry, for speaking to us. And the Transportation Working Group always have collaborations across all the working groups, like SEQM, and also the Systems Working Group, as well as automotive. So yeah, so I think the summary would be manage to engage and engage to manage.
And we invite you to participate with us in the SEQM group. And if you'd like to have the training, contact Barclay. He can. We've got some scholarships still available. We have a limited number now that I've got this partnership with IBM, but it's part of the goodwill in marketing, I guess. But Barclay can enable you to become a part of that if you'd like. By the way, Mike, are you the Mike Franco that's in our group? Let's see, Mike Franco.
Let me see, Mike.
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. I'd never seen your face.
Yeah, I had managed to get my webcam to work over there at my work desk, I think once, and then it totally locks me out from using my webcam with Global Meet. So I'm using my home laptop for this, and it works. So yeah, this is me.
So Mike just did enter into the training program. Yeah, there you go. Mike just began the training program about a week ago or something like that, or got enrolled.
Well, more like a year ago, when I went through the first test, and then I got busy doing other things, and then I went through the second lesson, and you sent me the test, which again, my work email just totally blocks it 9/10 of the time. So we switched to my personal email address, and it's still sitting in the queue behind a few other things. But seeing
that's what we realized.
Quarantined right now, anyway. Yeah, so
we realized,
I will finish it. I'm not sure when, but I will.
Well, that was Barkley. He went a long time before he really
I
could work
did.
it
I
into
had
it.
some gaps. I had some gaps
Yeah.
in there. That's right.
Yeah, everybody does. We're busy people, and so we're never really bothered by that. So keep trucking along, Mike.
All right. Yeah. Thanks again, Larry. And well, I would say, yeah, we will conclude the webinar here. And every second or third, yeah, third Thursday. So each month we the TWG Transportation Working Group have a webinar, and next month, yeah, we have a topic of smart cities going on. So yeah, we'll make sure you join us, and well, and check us out on YouTube and review all the webinars that we had before. So yeah, thank you everyone, and have a great day, and stay safe, stay healthy.
Bye, everyone.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.